Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions in the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. On this show, I interview lawyers ditching the billable hour and experts who can help attorneys move beyond billing time. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes. More on them later, and use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. You get 10% off, and it supports the show. The best way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. I'm thrilled to have with me on today's podcast Ryan McKeen. Ryan, welcome to Law Subscribed.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much for having me.
Well, if lawyers are listening, and they've probably come across some of your posts on LinkedIn, but just in case my listeners haven't heard of you before, just give us a little background.
Yeah, I'm Ryan McKeen. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 19 years, licensed to practice in the state of Connecticut. I started at a general practice firm where I practiced door law, which meant that like a divorce came in the door, I took it. A criminal case came in the door, I took it. A personal injury case came in, I took it. And I got a lot of litigation experience there. In 2012, I went out on my own, started opening up a new firm because I really decided that the like software as a service, tech space, cloud had come far enough that it was the time to really be able to do things better. About 2016, I started opening Connecticut Trial Firm, grew Connecticut Trial Firm really from 2018 to 2023 from 2.5 people to about 40 people, close to 8 figures in revenue, and learned a whole bunch of lessons in between. Had some successes, had some failures. Probably the biggest success being a $100 million jury verdict in Connecticut, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, there are nuances around a $100 million jury verdict, right? Of like actually collecting. As a former insurance defense attorney, I can tell you that it's complicated actually collecting that amount, right?
Oh, fortunately on this one, we have insurance on the other side of it. There's policies to cover it, and it's up on appeal currently, so we're still fighting through that process. It turns out if you're out there, you're not a personal injury lawyer, like you don't get a verdict and you just walk out of court and the lawyer writes you a check for the amount. They fight it for years, but that's the sort of to be expected, I guess.
Yeah, and since we have I have a mostly legal audience, even like the legal tech listeners, a lot of them are recovering lawyers. We're not going to get into the nuances of all that today, but I do want to ask you a little bit more in light of your background of the business model of your experience. So personal injury, obviously contingency is how it's typically done, but you did say you practiced door law. So like, were you billing time? How were you making money in those early days?
Any way I could is sort of the answer. I worked with a lot of people who were generally, for most of my career, middle class to lower middle class. And so hourly billing, I never had corporate clients, except when I started doing some municipal work later on. But I generally didn't have any corporate clients. Or if I had corporate clients, they were literally Joe the electrician, okay, who had a small electrical business.
Right.
And sort of hourly billing was not something that they could do. So it would be a lot of flat fee work, some hourly work in general, not a lot. But I mean, I used to do low end divorces, and it's like, well, all the people could ever afford to pay you was like $5,000. And so I would take a divorce basically on $5,000 is almost a flat fee. And, I made a living by doing a whole bunch of stuff like that because I wanted to do personal injury work, but on average for us, like a case wouldn't settle for about 15 months. And some of those cases, like the $100 million verdict, that's been going on for almost 7 years. Then other cases may settle in 6 months, but on average 15 months. So I was not independently wealthy. I was not wealthy at all. I had no savings. And so I couldn't come home to my wife and be like, honey, it's going to be okay. In 15 months, I should be earning a salary. So that was not a conversation that was going to fly in the McKeen household.
Are you a first generation attorney or any family members who are lawyers?
I'm the first person in my family to graduate from a 4-year college. So my mom got her associate's degree, became a legal secretary, I guess now known as a paralegal. My dad served in the military and then ultimately went into network engineering for retail stores, like communicating data back to the home office in like the 1980s and 1990s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. And I think it's good to get a little bit of that background because I think it informs, who we are in light of maybe where we came from and our family histories with law. So even though your mom was like in legal, it wasn't like the same thing as like having a lawyer parent who like teaches you everything before you go to law school. So how to succeed there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was fortunate to learn from some really great attorneys who were consummate professionals. But I think like for me, like there was always two things, one of which was a constant of like fear. Like I had no idea like what I was doing or how things worked. And the other was just that sort of, I think, stemmed from that, which was the ambition. Like nobody was going to open the door for me. So it's like, okay, in 2007, I launch a blog and that blog blows up in a big way, and I start getting 1 million views a year on this blog, and I write about something that changes Connecticut's political landscape, results in a Supreme Court case. So I was hungry, and I don't think I would have done those things had I had sort of a more had I had had I felt like I had some safety net.
Right. Right. I think that plays a big role. That's always the entrepreneur's dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Of, if you raise too much money, then you might not end up succeeding. And venture capitalists are now, since the last cycle that they were in where too much money got thrown at companies, not a lot of them were able to succeed, right? So I think that's a great point that you made. In particular, since there's a lot of current or would-be law firm founders that listen to the pod. So then your father was in the military. I mean, did he instill in you any of those that process mindset that you learn in the military?
And my dad and I are very different people. I mean, it's hard for me to say I didn't learn anything from him in that regard, but I think I err more on the creative people side of things than on the process side of things.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because I know you're affiliated with in some way, or you speak very highly of Filevine and like legal tech in general, right? And so like when it comes to your use of technology and adoption of technology, so you consider that like a creative approach to solving law firm business problems then, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, look, necessity sort of like I think there are two things in life. One of which is like where you naturally go if left to your own devices. Like
Mhm.
if I was left to my own devices, I would teach or I would write or I would, coach or consult in those things. Um, but when you're forced to build a firm and there's nobody else to do it, really documenting and fine tuning those processes, that was the only way forward for me. So
Mhm.
using the technology to scale, to become more efficient, to achieve more efficiency year over year, it was essentially because I wanted to make payroll. Like and it was also at some point somewhat cathartic and fun. It became almost like a game to me of like, well, can I automate this process or can I do this thing? And I think that creativity part challenged me, but it's not the work I would normally want to do. But fortunately, we had Allison, who's my wife, on who's very practical and very sort of process oriented and she could help offset some of my deficiencies.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so finding the right people, right? That's
Yeah.
always a good thing. If you happen to be married to them, that helps too sometimes.
Yep. Yep. It helps a lot. And I think, but I think, I think that's actually a really good point is that, for any relationship to work, you have to get what you need from it. And, my personality type comes back as like daredevil and she is very practical. So having me say, you know what, I have this idea, we could do this, this, and this. And then it's like, well, how are we going to pay for that? What are we going to need to do that? In both in business and in just life. I'm like, hey, you know, let's go to let's go to Barcelona in a few weeks. And she's like, well, who's going to watch the dogs? That kind of dialogue is where we go.
Well, I'm also married to an Allison, and we have the reverse roles in our
Eh,
relationship.
So, but the good news is right. Like Allison gets to go to Barcelona and my dogs get to be safe.
Right.
So like that, like and maybe without each other, she wouldn't go to Barcelona and my dogs would be left to hunt squirrels for the week or something.
Oh man. So in these early days, moving into, and you could bring us into like when you were, when you built out your personal injury practice. Like, what was some of the technology you were using? Like, did you start with like just like pen and paper and like move to Excel and like what, like give us that technological journey?
Yeah, really what inspired me in like 2011, 2012 to start my law firm was the cloud. And so I signed up with Clio. Like I was very early on with Clio to the point Jack Newton did like a sales call with me. I mean,
Right.
this is how long ago that was. And so from the jump, I was using Clio and Dropbox and Ring Central and Adobe Cloud, QuickBooks Online, all of those various platforms. But when I decided to switch to personal injury, I Clio wasn't adequate for what I wanted it to do. And interestingly, Ryan Anderson, another Clio user at the time, was feeling the same thing. I just sat there and was like, "Oh, I wish Clio did this," and he went out and built FileFind. So I was a very early customer of theirs because I saw the potential in what they were trying to do. They were thinking about problems in a way that I was like, "Yes, this makes a lot of sense." So we were very early on with FileFind. I think there were about 20 people when we signed up with them, and now there's several hundred, 500 people, I think that they are, and their software is iterated and grown impressively. But the ability right now for a lawyer to start or to put very powerful software at the core of their practice, like boy, that is where excellent client service comes. That's where excellent legal work comes. That's where your profit comes, because there's never been an easier time in the history of the world to do that right now.
Mm-hmm. So with that background of like seeing tech that was good to have, but not necessarily built for the purpose for which you wanted to use it, what is your opinion on all of this legal tech that's out there that they're trying to be an all-in-one, one-stop solution? Do you think that that's the right path for them to go? And for law firm owners, and I realize the answer is it depends, and you have to learn about the law firm and like what are their goals and all that. But like like a little bit more structured answer than that. Like I'm curious to get your perspective on it because my perspective has shifted over just the last like 4 to 5 years on that.
My thoughts on this are that fundamentally, law law firm is project management. Okay. So at the core of these things, you need project management software. And so like, well, what is in project management software? You need the ability to report on things. You need the ability to track tasks. You need the ability to store information, documents, notes, all those kinds of things.
And
You should have
securely,
the
I might add, with
insecurely
the storage part, right? In
with the
particular.
storage part, you need to be able to store and access those documents. You need to be able to, in many cases, in some cases, take payments or receive payments. Like that's sort of an added bonus. You need to be able to calendar things and keep track of dates, those things. So I mean, that is like the core, like that, like a plumber would understand that as project management software.
Right. Right.
Okay, we're installing a water tank at this house. Okay, okay, we're going to put water tank project. It's going to push down the tasks and it's going to assign the people. We're going to report on it. We're going to see how much we made. We can look at an overview of our practice. So my general thinking in this space is that the there is and will be consolidation in it. And I think that the software that really thrives are the ones that do that well, but are malleable in ways and sort of easily malleable because there are Salesforce-based products out there that are excellent, but require you to hire a Salesforce engineer, which
Mm-hmm.
may be beyond maybe in excess of a salary of what a small firm lawyer is making. So there's got to be sort of different price points on it. But I sort of think that there's consolidation, and really the products that do those things the best are the ones that are going to just win that market.
Yeah. And because I get asked that question a lot of times too, of like, which solution should I use, right? And what's the best one, and all that. And I feel like some of these, like my case and your file vines, are trying to be closed ecosystem. Like we do it all. This is what we do. You don't need to go anywhere else. And yet Clio has like an open API, not completely open, but they're like integrate with a million things, right? And then you have attorneys like me who are like, well, I'm just going to pick a bunch of different pieces of software that do everything that you just said, Ryan, that they may or may not communicate with each other, but you could use Zapier or Make or some of these other tools to make up the difference, right? And so, like those are kind of your only approaches right now if you want to be a tech forward law firm, unless what you have any other things to say about that?
You hit it. You hit it right. FileVine has a massively robust API. Like,
Mhm.
and yes, like there's going to be they need, and I think it is useful, and there's some nuance here, right? Because to look at FileVine and Clio not necessarily as case management softwares, but as almost competitors of Google Workspace and Office 365, like
Right.
bent to legal. And you're going to every firm's going to need some sort of like additional add-ons, right? And that is where API comes in. So if you're a lawyer out there and you're vetting tech products and they don't have a robust API, like you're going to be behind the curve because you're never going to be able to bend it, and it's going to require manual exports and imports of data that's just going to take time and be inefficient.
Right, right. And I'll tell you what, I was for only the audio listeners, I highly recommend you go and subscribe to the video podcast at www.lawsubscribe.com, because I'm gonna indicate with my hands here. I was this close to signing up with FileVine actually this year, and that's because they've really come a super long way in what they're able to do outside of just personal injury and just being very adaptable, even within their own ecosystem. But since I bill on subscription, they have like a payments plan thing that they're launching soon, or actually at the time of recording, it might like a beta version might be launched, but it wasn't what I needed for subscription. So like for me, that was the only thing. But I was really a huge fan of where they've come since they were just doing personal injury work. When I also talked to one of their sales rep and I was like, first of all, this is too expensive for me because my return on like what I'm getting per client is not the same thing as personal injury attorneys. But I am, I'm keeping a very close eye on their product development, and they were so great. I talked to one of their product people about what I would need from a subscription billing perspective, and then I very well may sign up as a future customer of theirs. And I don't like the all-in-one solutions a lot anymore, but what they've done is really impressive.
Here's my advice to anybody out there. You need a system of record to scale. Like when you're small, you can have bits and pieces of data in Dropbox and your Gmail and your Outlook and all these things, right? But if you're looking to grow at all, like you need to have a place where all your information is. And I think that that's incredibly valuable for scaling. But I also think as the AI develops into these programs, which FileVine is huge into, having your data there and the ability for bots to learn on your data and learn your processes and learn what you're doing, I think it's incredibly valuable for firms. So whatever it is out there, like you should have something in your firm where it's like, I can look at this thing and the emails are in there, the text messages are in there, the documents, the calendar, the tasks.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, you brought up AI. Let's let the record reflect that Ryan brought up AI and I didn't bring up AI because I'm always talking about AI, Ryan.
Yeah.
And tell me about AI. What's your perspective on how AI is going to revolutionize the legal profession?
I, I, it's going to change everything, and I don't think that that's understated. The thing I think that people don't understand is how fast it's going to change things and how swift the adoption of this technology is going to be, especially as it gets built out into things like Office 365 and Google Workspace. It's going to level a lot of things. I mean, I have been using Google Gemini. I don't use Google Search anymore. Gemini is
Mhm.
just so good at cutting through a whole bunch of things and getting things. Chat GPT, of just the ability to build GPT bots and create parameters for bots to operate and train on. Like, I mean, I created a bot to do blog posts based upon things that I had done. I
Mhm.
uploaded a whole bunch of CLE material we had on personal injury liens and created a lien bot that you could ask questions from thousands of pages of documents and it would spit back answers. But the idea of summarization, generation is incredible. And what is going to happen is these products like FileVine and Clio and others are going to become almost semi-autonomous. And so what I mean by that is if you get a case in, it's going to get your information, right? And then it's going to know, okay, I'm going to write to this town for the police report, and it's going to do it. And then it's going to say, I'm going to write and get these meds. And then when the meds come in, it's going to process the meds, review them, flag things for the lawyer or the paralegal. Then it's going to say, okay, we're going to draft a demand. You want us to send the demand to the insurance? Yep. Okay, insurance offer came back. This is too low based upon other similar cases I see in your database. Do you want me to file a lawsuit? Yes. Okay, here's a draft complaint. And so I think that those things are where it is going. And I mean, I just gave my example in personal injury, but you can see this in a lot of areas of law, whether it's estate planning or family work or immigration, and so a lot of time that is now consumed by lawyers and paralegals will be freed from doing exactly those things.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. Yeah, and I think that gets rid of a lot of non-billable time for the billable hour lawyers out there, but I also think that gets rid of a lot of billable time too. And so this is, the purpose of the podcast is to teach lawyers that there's other ways to bill.
Oh, there is no question it is going to change billable. I also think it may change contingency fee too, because, right now firms can get a third in most states and 40%, maybe 50%. But if those margins get better because the firm has to employ less, I could very well see the contingency fees being reduced because people will spend more to acquire more market share.
Right. And the only way to really be competitive at that point then, if AI raises all ships, is on price. Where I think the subscription model could come into play, right? Because what are some other benefits that even the personal injury lawyer can provide? What are subscriber benefits that go beyond just getting a settlement or taking your case to trial, right? There's got to be other things. Now, I'm not a personal injury lawyer. I was on the other side. But I feel like there's some, even if the benefit is only right now in status quo land, you pay us $100 a month. You've got some skin in the game. So we get a really good settlement offer. You're going to take it because you're going to pay for costs. You're paying $100 a month. But instead of taking a third, we're going to take 29% or something like that, right? So like there's some trade-off there. So that's an obvious subscriber benefit. And then it gives them some skin in the game. I mean, how does that sound to you? And then what about maybe some other potential subscriber benefits a law firm could offer if they wanted to offer some other things?
No, I think it's like one of my big beliefs here is that what's old is going to be new again, right? And so society has become massively complicated. I graduated law school in 2005. Like, there wasn't really social media, there wasn't cryptocurrency, there wasn't legal cannabis all over the place. Like, and those are just small examples of the changes, and let alone changes surrounding same-sex marriage and gender and all these different things that are massive societal changes that impact the law and create legal jobs, right? And the complexity at which financial regulation or cybersecurity or all these things exist right now. What I think is that, the lawyers in the 1950s didn't deal with all of that complexity. Society was a much simpler place, right? You would do a real estate closing, it would be a deed and a mortgage, and it would be this thick. If you try to buy a shed now, you get, documents yay thick that you have to click and sign. And so I think that what people need from lawyers, right, is they need the guidance of what should I do? I've got this information. I'm not paying you for process. I'm paying you for counseling. I'm paying you for helping me through this because there's a human side of it. If you've ever had a legal problem, I mean, AI is not going to eliminate your fear. It's not going to eliminate your anxiety. If you're in a car accident and you can't work, it's not going to help you pay your bills. So I think more lawyering is going to switch to client counseling, essentially advising, and then being able to act and execute that advice, at least for the time being until we have like robot friends or something.
Right, right. Well, legal counselor is already a thing, right? Like we're already
Yep.
called counselor, and that
Yep.
I think that meaning takes on a whole other meaning when AI comes into the game. I think you're right.
Well, and I think that the what you're talking about with the subscription thing here, Matt, is accessibility and access to justice, access to lawyering advice. Whereas before, maybe if you're a divorce lawyer serving somebody for $5,000, you couldn't even help that person. And now with automation and AI and all of these things, that can actually be a profitable thing for you and help and put your client in a better position. So I think you're going to see those opportunities. And I think the lawyers who are going to win are going to understand the technology and adapt. And they're going to find more space. I think there's some statistic about like Uber and cabs at airports. And it turns out like cabs were fighting over like 4% of the market. And
Yeah.
Uber came along and they unlocked the other 96%.
Right.
And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI in legal, whether it's divorce or estate planning or personal injury or whatever.
And that is the latent legal market. There was a latent cab market, and
Yep.
now there's a latent legal market that lawyers simply just aren't serving. So either we have to adapt our business models, or other industries will come in. There will be re-regulation, and we will lose our monopoly on legal services. Maybe we
If
should.
you're getting, I mean, if you're getting paid $500 an hour to read things and to write things or more, you should be thinking about some things that you might want to develop some other skills. I put it that way.
Right, right. And the thing is like it doesn't have to be expensive, like you said, but it helps with problem avoidance. Because like right now, if you're a personal injury attorney, you wait until people have a big problem. You might get them before they've received any treatment, but you might get them after they've already been treating. And depending on when you get your client, that changes the strategy and everything of the case. Now, what if you had clients who were subscribed to you before they were injured? What would be a benefit? Well, one of the benefits I would give them, one of the things I tell my clients is get umbrella coverage because
Yep.
you don't know what the other person's coverage is going to be. You want sufficient underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage, and you want umbrella coverage because they might not have insurance or a lot of insurance. And so that's like when they're paying you ahead of time, you could get into this problem avoidance space as opposed to
Yeah.
just problem solving. What do you think?
No question. I mean, and see what you're hitting on, Matt, here is just the limitless sort of possibility. What if you take anything from this call, it's like, the meteor is coming for you. And actually the meteor is really close. Like it is in your neighborhood. Okay. At this moment, the development of Chat GPT, even in the past 16, 17 months that it's been out, is unbelievable. And it's only going to get better infinitely, and quickly. So I mean, the question is like, well, what are you going to do with this? And are you going to think differently about how you're serving your clients? And I mean, in fact, I'm meeting with a client tomorrow, and they have like an industry specific client base that they're looking to solve in this way, which is essentially like subscription based app used to sort of help them with their common legal problems that arise in the industry. And
Mhm.
so people who are thinking about that in that way, like sky's the limit. You're going to make more money.
Right. And you can still charge a premium when you use this business model. It's just like your client's going to have pricing certainty. You're going to have some more revenue certainty, which is nice. But then you could take a whale approach where you go after the big whales, or you could take the blue ocean is full of fish, and you could go for for the masses instead and charge a fewer amount per fish. So your potential revenues are pretty significant in either approach that you take.
Yep.
For you now, so you said you're meeting with a client. So this is not a personal injury client. So we've been hiding the ball a little bit. We're halfway through the interview. My listeners already heard the ads go through. Tell us about what's next for you, Ryan. What you've recently announced.
So yeah, over the years, I've done a lot of teaching, a lot of informal consulting, a lot of speaking around the country, writing, those kinds of things. And ultimately, I had the opportunity to sell my interest in the personal injury business. So exited that, which is a good thing. And it became apparent to me that what was motivating me and was making me happy was exactly that kind of work, which was building, creating in the legal space, but not running a law firm or being a lawyer. So about a month ago, we launched Best Era, which is a company comprised of, it was three people who really helped build and grow and scale Connecticut trial firm. Brittany Green, who handled our marketing at Connecticut trial firm, and Allison McKeen, who's my wife, who handled finance and operations. So as we grew from nowhere to about 40 people and no revenue to close to 10 figures in revenue, we learned a lot along the way, and we made a lot of connections, and we have a lot of knowledge as to how things work. And so we decided to go into consulting. And so our basic thing is that we want to help people, company, either whether it be lawyers, law firms, or legal tech companies, or legal adjacent companies that serve the legal industry, live their best era, get better at what it is that they do. So that's the kind of consulting work that we're doing.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight something for my listeners who, a lot of them they don't like the way law is traditionally practiced, and they're burned out, or they're getting burned out, and so they are trying to find a way out, and they might think like consulting, like what you're doing. But you had almost 20 years of practice experience before you went and did this, right? So you put in the time learning and growing a law firm, right? So that's what I think distinguishes you from lawyers who all of a sudden they're a coach for lawyers, but they had 2 years of practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's our value proposition, which is we've done the thing, and we're taking the lessons that we've done and meeting people where they are in various different ways and helping them navigate whatever challenges they're having to make, our sort of slogan is we're making, the future of legal one dream at a time. And that's the kind of work we like to do.
Right. But you're also, as far as the firms that you're helping, you're practice area agnostic, more or less, even though you come from this personal injury background?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I coached for years at Lawyerist. So I've worked with every kind of firm across the globe: immigration, corporate practice, personal injury, estate planning, you name it. And actually across the world, I've had international clients like Argentina and South Africa and all over the place. So yes. So our basic belief is that business is business, and applying the right business principles, solving the problems, looking at things from an outsider perspective and proposing solutions and working through them is something that we're very capable of doing.
Interesting. In doing that coaching, because what I find with mentorship, because I engage in a lot of mentorship, I'm sure you do too. I was the recipient of mentorship. I find that when I mentor either law students or younger lawyers, I'm learning things that help my practice. So when you're coaching even other practice area lawyers, did any of that inform your own practice when you were still practicing?
For absolutely. Because what you'll find is, if you do enough of this, that the challenges across practice area, across law firm size, across geography are all the same. They all face different challenges same challenges at different times. And sometimes too, if you're being honest and you're doing the thing, it's hey, am I taking my own medicine? Am I following my own advice here? And I'm talking to somebody and I'm proposing some solutions, and I'm do we do that? Am I walking the walk here? And I think, in getting to launch Best Era, there was a lot of different things that we're doing from the jump that are hey, no, we're we're going to do the things that we preach.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really think that the future of law will not be billing time. And even to the extent that I've had some guests on the show that talk about how they might not be billing time, but they're still tracking time. It's how they could spend less time on things because then they make more money when you're not billing your time, right? Like, how could we, okay, this process took an hour. How could it take 30 minutes? How could it take 15 minutes? How could it take, 1 minute, right? Like, automate it, productize it, package it, that kind of thing, right? Um, with personal injury, when you're on contingency, like, that incentive is right there. Like, you might have to work really hard to take a case to trial, and you might have to put a lot of hours in if you're trying a case. But like, until you get to that point, I have to imagine, having been on the other side, that it's like efficiency, 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 all the way up to that where you have no other choice but to spend a lot of time. Like, was that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that drew me to personal injury work, which was the ability to automate, be efficient. But even when you're doing trial, I mean, like, you want to be efficient as can be at trial. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, efficient doesn't mean not doing the work. Like, we were a
Right.
firm that very much did the work. We got in experts, we took depots, we aggressively prosecuted our claims. Like, we weren't passive in any which way in that. But you don't want to, if you can get the complaint out well done in 20 minutes versus 2 hours, like, you need to be doing it in 20 minutes because
Right.
I think, look, man, I think that the macro trend of our lifetime is really efficiency. Things are just getting more and more and more efficient, and that's true from ordering a pizza to everything except laundry. Laundry has not seemed to got more efficient, but it's never been easier to travel or to do many things. We've gotten rid of paper boarding passes because it's phones, and someday we'll get rid of phones because phones are inefficient. You'll just walk through the airport, scan your face, and on the plane you'll go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know if you've seen, what is it, Factor AI or something, where like they've incorporated OpenAI's, back end into their robots. I think those robots will be doing our laundry. That's how we'll make it
Yep.
more efficient in the future, right?
Well, you're starting to see robots mow the lawn, and you're starting to see robots clean the pools or, vacuum the Roomba. I mean, it's yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited. I've heard that they're going to try to hit price point of like a car. So you could lease a robot like you lease a car, and then it could just do all the house stuff or the home stuff or whatever. I look forward to that day from an efficiency standpoint. But the reason I wanted to bring that up, though, is because you're going to be helping law firms practice area agnostic. But I think when law firms are not billing their time, those lessons of how do we be more efficient while still producing high quality work product become significantly more important to the law firms who have ditched the billable hour as we move into this AI era that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and you know what it is? I mean, it's really a mindset shift. And I'm old enough to have seen this several times over in legal. And I think it's an almost analogous to the cloud. I mean, initially it was like, oh, you have to have a server, you can't be in the cloud. That's unethical, blah. All this sort of resistance that could best be summed up of I like the way things are now and I don't want to change. But I think here, like, the hand gets forced. And it's really a mindset shift, and I think the market will play out. The firms that do this will be able to attract more clients, make more money, pay associates more, and the firms that don't will go under. I think you're going to see, the firms that lag on this, and I'm not talking like, in the cloud, fine, you could have waited 10 years to go to that, and you just would have wasted some money, but you'd be okay. But with this, I think that if you're not getting there faster, particularly because, there's a labor shortage in legal, and it's hard to find lawyers. It's hard to hire lawyers. It's hard to retain lawyers. Lawyers are very expensive. And so the only solution forward is really a technical solution of enabling lawyers to do more work, fewer lawyers doing more work to meet even current demand, not even future demand. So I think that the firms that do that are the ones that are going to attract the talent. And I also think that there's a generational thing too, where, I mean, look, I'm an adjunct professor at University of Connecticut School of Law, teaching uh, business stuff like we're talking about now. I think that there's a generational thing. A lot of students, what they're looking for is that efficiency. They don't want to be students they don't want to be lawyers who are just sitting there with boxes of documents for a year, going through and tabbing things and indexing things. That's not why they went to law school. They
Right.
may have gone to help people. They may have gone to, because they were interested in advocacy, or maybe they went to even make money, but none of these students are coming out of law school like, hey, I can't wait to do doc review. None of them.
And and I think that's so like even what you were talking about beforehand about how there's a labor shortage, that's a clippable part of this episode for law students or prospective law students because I'll guest lecture at for in front of law school classes and like they are scared of AI. They're like it's going to take our jobs. No, 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 no. There's a labor shortage, and if you learn how to use these tools, like these law firms will want to hire you for efficiency gains, right? Like that's the solution is don't be afraid of these tools. It's not going to replace you. You can be so valuable to these law firms if you learn how to use them.
Exactly. And you're looking at it the right way, Matt. I mean, with everything, there's an opportunity, and you're looking at it as an opportunity. And if you're out there listening, like this is inevitable. And I've gotten dirty looks. I've spoke to a bunch of Supreme Court justices in New England at a conference on AI, and I was like, it's going to take jobs. And it was like, I'm like, no, no. I can wish it were different, but it is going to take jobs. And so the question is like, well, what do you do? Do you change what you're doing and profit from it, or do you go down with the ship? Choose.
Right. And for me, it's mostly speculation, but I have to imagine that like what it used to take to become like $1 million law firm and then go to 1 to 5 and 5 to 10 and all that kind of thing. Like you'd have to grow, you'd have to hire, you need a minimum X amount of staff, X amount of attorneys. But now you could just, with AI, you could 5X, 10X productivity of your existing people and your ability to hit those revenue milestones. You don't need the overhead and the staff that you needed before, don't you think?
Correct. No
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Well, as we start to wrap up the interview, I will say that I am particularly looking. At the time of recording, I'm in the process of interviewing for my first legal extern, and the reason I'm hiring a law student and I can't compensate them as much as what their credit hours are worth to them. And I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching, and I'm going to do it semester to semester. I'm starting with just one extern. But lawyers don't know how to use AI like some law students are learning to use AI. And so like that's what I'm looking for because as an AI powered law firm, that's what I need. Like I need that law student. So naturally I got the domain to legalextern.com. So depending on whenever this goes live, that domain is still out there and I'm going to be getting a new one every semester. And so feel free to for the listeners if you know any law students, send them that way. And Ryan, send your future students to legalextern.com because maybe they could extern with me if you're teaching them AI stuff. That would be helpful.
Awesome.
For we'll get. I want to ask you a fun question, then we'll do a little bit more about Best Era and how people can get in touch and what you're doing to specifically help them there. But the fun question is, Ryan, is a hot dog a sandwich and why?
No, it is not a sandwich. I don't really have a good explanation why, but
What's your
it
gut?
is.
What's your
My
gut
gut is a hot
reason?
dog's a hot dog. A sandwich is a sandwich. Like a sandwich is something that has meat that is thin and flat. A hot dog is not thin and flat. So if pressed, I guess that's where I would make the distinction. The same way I would say though, like a lobster roll is not a sandwich. So a sandwich,
Hmm.
I think, really encompasses bread on top and bread on the bottom.
Okay. All right.
I think
Uh,
you could cut a hot dog and put it in a sandwich and make a hot dog sandwich, but we call that bologna, right?
all right. All right. Very good. Very good. That might have been the fourth time in 100-something interviews that somebody's actually like categorized putting a hot dog on two pieces of bread. Well, so then as we round out the episode here, Best Era, how do people get in touch? What exactly are you doing? How does a law firm know that they're in the right place to reach out to you?
Yeah. Our website, which should be live by the time this airs, is bestera.io. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, DM me on LinkedIn. I'm there. That's a great place to get a hold of me. And look, we're doing one of the fun things about this is we're building many different entry points for people. So one of the things that we want to build are some products that are going to come out in the coming months that I think are really exciting that somebody who's very small could just glom onto and get a lot of value out of. We built a Slack community where I did a LinkedIn post, and right now we've got 60 lawyers and it's $1 a day. So where we're talking about things like we're talking about AI, we're talking about websites. I'm having the Filevine futurists come and talk about AI, having a longevity doctor come and talk. It's sort of an ask us anything. So we're trying to build a community in that way, and that's $1 a day. And then what we're looking to do is, look, we're doing some higher end bespoke consulting where you're getting our time, we're flying, we're going through your records, we're helping implement processes, and that's sort of on the more expensive side of things. So, reach out to us at any point. We don't do, or at least right now, we don't do any like coaching, so it's not like one-on-one. Like we're like, hey, let's get in for this project, let's do this thing, let's follow up, but it's not sort of like an hourly coaching model in that way. And we come up with a price, we quote deliverables, timetables, and we work to do it.
All right, great. Glad to hear you're not billing by the hour on a coaching business for Best Era.
No, nope, nope. I mean, our goal is to sort of add 10 times the value that we charge to our clients. And I mean, we've done things like, financial reviews, financial planning for firms. Brittany's done things like marketing reviews, comprehensive, not just SEO. We don't sell marketing services, but we're like, here's your marketing, here's the opportunities, here's some of the problems, here's where to budget, how to budget. And, we just did a retreat for a firm last week where we went and worked on their vision, their values, did 2-year strategic plans, org charts, helped them understand their finances and marketing. So, and we're working on some really cool projects with some companies that are in the space that I'm really pretty excited about that are going to come out.
Well, we'll have to have you back on the show in maybe 6 months to a year's time, and we'll talk about that. How does that sound?
Sounds good, Matt. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, everyone, if any of that sounds interesting to you, you heard it's bestera.io. Follow Ryan McKeen on LinkedIn. And with that, Ryan, thanks again so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Matt.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.